Okay, so I think that we are recording now. So I am here with Anita Johnston, who is one of my great heroes of eating disorders. She's been treating eating disorders for, I know that you wrote Light of the Moon Cafe in 1997. I know it was published in 1997. So
96.
96.
Yeah, so it's been about 35 years that I've been working in the
35
field.
years.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the first recovery books that I read when I was really in my recovery, starting a heavy process of recovery, and it was life-changing for me, and probably one of the reasons that I went into treating eating disorders. So I'm
How nice to hear.
super excited to be here with you. So Anita Johnston, she wrote Eating in the Light of the Moon, and she has several treatment centers, one in Maui, right?
Yeah, it's a residential treatment center is on Maui, Aipono, Maui.
Aipono. And then you also have treatment centers in Tennessee and Colorado, is that right?
Actually, no.
Okay.
Years ago I did in Tennessee, but now I have the residential treatment program in Maui, Aipono, Maui, and then I have intensive outpatient programs in Honolulu and on the Big Island of Hawaii. But I travel a lot, so I also have a second base in Colorado, and I do a lot of online work and then fly back and forth to Hawaii.
That's nice.
I know, I'm not complaining, right?
That's great. So you love what you do.
I do. I love it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So today I want to talk about body image, and I'm going to start out by just talking about Eating in the Light of the Moon and what was so, I want to say, earth-shattering and life-changing for me, and kind of veer into body image from there. When I read it, what stood out to me was how you spoke about eating disorders affecting women or men, but women who in their heart of hearts felt other and different. And I know that for me, growing up, I felt very different. I was super sensitive, always looking out for people, always worried about people's well-being. And that made me extremely vulnerable to bullying and insults. And I was very sensitive to that. And because of that, I felt very different, and life was very painful for me as a little girl. And part of my disordered eating came from trying to control the way people thought of me and to protect myself by being as thin as I possibly could. I felt that if I was skinny, nobody could dislike me or say bad things about me. And when I read your book, I said, oh, that makes so much sense. I have always felt that I'm so different from everybody. I always felt that everybody else is one way and I'm this weirdo, and I have to do something in order for me not to be the weirdo. And when I read that, when I read all of those feelings that I had put into words, I knew that I wasn't alone. So I'm wondering if you can sort of speak to that and speak to that feeling of being other and how that relates to eating disorders and body image.
Sure. Well, how I discovered that was when I got into the field. Mind you, this is the early 1980s, so there wasn't a lot written. There weren't very many treatment programs. Everything was hospital-based, symptom-oriented. And I was supervising a psychology intern that was doing her doctoral dissertation on the incidence of eating disorders in Hawaii. And so we would meet regularly to discuss this. And basically, it got to the point of trying to figure this out. And so she and I and another woman, we created the Anorexia and Bulimia Center of Hawaii, because we saw that there was a problem and there needed to be some center to address it. And it ended up, well, I guess we have to create that. And so in the beginning, I just had to use all the curiosity I could muster to figure out what I was curious about, because people came in all ages, all walks of life, all sizes, all ethnicities, all different kinds of struggles with eating. And so I was intrigued, well, okay, what is it? What's the common denominator here? Why, number one, is it all females? Because back then, that's all who was showing up. It's changed, but that's how it was back then. Second, why was it these girls and women? And third, why was the struggle around eating food in their bodies? And so I just had to listen as closely as I could to their stories. And that's the common thread that I discovered, is that they were all very sensitive beings, in that they were very emotionally sensitive and highly intuitive, which to my mind are wonderful qualities to have. I think our world would be in a lot better shape if more of our world leaders had those qualities, because what comes with that is a level of empathy and compassion that's beautiful and extraordinary. But the problem with having a nature like this is that the world we live in today doesn't recognize or even value those attributes. So we inherit, the beliefs of the culture. And so what I saw was happening with these individuals is they believed, well, I'm different. I feel things more deeply than others. I see things. I can perceive hypocrisy. I can tell when things are not okay, even if everyone is saying things are just fine. There must be something wrong with me, because that's the only way you can make sense out of that. Well, nobody else sees it, and I see. Well, and then everybody else is oftentimes happy to chime in and go, "Yeah, there's something wrong with you,"
Right.
because maybe they don't want to see these things, or they don't want to feel these things, and so it goes with this idea that gets deeply embedded. There must be something wrong with me, and then somewhere along the line, and it's usually by going on a diet, what happens is this idea, oh, I know what's wrong with me. It's my body. I'm too fat, or my thighs are too big, or I have a double chin, and then, as painful as that is, and that's very, very painful, but there is some relief in saying, oh, I know what it is. I know what's wrong with me, and I know what I need to do is I've got to change my body. I will lose weight. I will run every day. I will eat carrots, and then not only is there some relief in knowing, in thinking and believing, oh, I know what the problem is and I know what the solution is, but then what happens is we get caught up in that solution, and all those things that a thin-skinned person really struggles with, maybe love-hate relationship with their mother. Oh, their boyfriend just ditched them. They're on a career path that doesn't suit them. They're very shy and they don't know how to make friends. All of that kind of moves into the background, and the whole focus becomes, I got to fix this body. I gotta. So that's kind of how I saw it happening in many different ways.
Yes. Yeah, it's so true. And when you're talking about that, I can't help but think of this story from when I was working in my first treatment center as a clinician, as an intern, and it was during family group. We had this multi-family group where everybody and their families would sit together and do therapy. And this one woman was talking to her mother, and she said, we were in the car and I asked you what was the matter, and you said everything's fine. And I knew that everything wasn't fine because of the way you were acting. Your hands were clenched on the steering wheel, and your jaw was tight, and your brow was furrowed. And I said, Mom, what's the matter? And you said, everything is fine. I'm fine. And that makes me crazy, Mom. That makes me crazy. You say one thing, but the truth is another reality. And I just remember thinking to myself, oh my God, she said that out loud. Mm-hmm. She was able to see it, note it, and say it, and know what made her crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see, it's important to understand that we're all in this soup together, right? So you can't blame mothers or fathers or anybody else, because it's the nature of the culture that we've grown up in. Stiff upper lip, got to get a handle on it. I need to handle all these problems by myself, and not dump it on my kids, or there's all these messages. And so the fallout is, to maybe one person, they would have gone, yeah, mom's stressed. She says everything's okay, but I can tell it's not. To somebody else, that stress could penetrate their very bones.
Yeah.
And now we've got a problem. So it a lot of people think that, oh, if I could only get the world to behave itself, if he would stop doing that, or if she would be doing this, then I'd be okay. And that's never the truth, because the truth is, if you're very sensitive, what's required is a certain skill set to deal with the nonsense in the world. There's lots of nonsense, and it's not going to go away. Now, I think advocacy is a really good thing, but that's not where recovery comes from. Recovery comes from shifting the way you respond to the stressors of the world. Like this individual you're talking about, instead of her being like a sponge and holding on to all of mom's stress, she communicated that so that she wasn't holding on to it. And that's why that assertive communication is, in my mind, in my experience, the number one critical skill. So critical that I've never, ever, 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 and I've seen lots and lots of people totally recover, not in recovery, but totally recover, period. But I've never seen anyone do it without learning the skill of assertive communication. It's that important.
So tell me, how do you think that one gains that skill?
Practice. Well, first of all, you need to know what it is. Basically, because we're not taught this. I didn't learn this till I was in graduate school, and it not only did it blow my mind, but it changed my life, profoundly. And so, what assertive communication is: the capacity to identify, accept, and express your thoughts and feelings in a way that honors them, but also honors the other person. Mm-hmm. So typically we're taught one way or another. We're taught to be passive, or we're taught to just keep our mouth shut and hold everything in and don't say anything that would upset anyone. And as a result, we end up feeling bad about ourselves. Or we're taught to be aggressive, where boom, we just let it out and we tell people what we think and feel with no consideration for how it might affect their feelings. Or then there's the pendulum swing, where we're passive till we can't stand it any longer. We swing over and boom, we let someone have it. So that's basically what we're taught. And if I had it my way, assertive communication would be taught in every school in the country, because who needs their algebra when they grow up, right?
That's
what
true.
do you need algebra for? But assertive communication, whoa, that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you're a sensitive being. Because if you're a sensitive being, you're like Velcro. And you need to be a little more like Teflon. You need to be able to not have things cling and penetrate to you.
Yes.
And it's a skill. That's the good news. Is it's not like you need some magical DNA. You're not going to change the way you were born. You're born with a certain temperament, but you can develop the skill to be totally okay being a sensitive being in the world that we live in. It's requires assertive communication, the capacity to set boundaries. So when you set boundaries, which are different from walls create prisons, right? It's like if you say no, then you get locked up in that as well. Boundaries are permeable, they're flexible, they move given circumstances, given the individuals you're working with, given where you're at a particular time in a particular situation. They're malleable, but you're in charge. You get to decide, oh, this is someone I can really open up to and bare my heart. Oh, this is someone I really need to just be a little more distant with until I, feel like I can open up or not. So that's a skill again, and they're like any skill, like driving a car or learning to swim or ride a bike. You learn it with practice. Anybody can do it.
Yeah, right. And I think that so many of us forget that we're not, we, especially, I know in my population that I work with and that you work with, it's everybody else can do this, but I can't.
Yeah. Yeah, because they don't realize it's a skill.
Right. It's a skill.
Mm-hmm.
So in your experience, how do women really develop these, this body hatred, this way of taking everything out on their bodies?
I think it starts at a very early age, and neuroscience speaks to that. And when you start to understand how neural pathways are made in our brain, they're literal, they're actual grooves, that are created through repetition and through repetition of thought, even. So the way little kids think, all of us when we're little. Okay, so our brains aren't fully developed. We don't, our frontal lobes, this part of our brain that has to do with abstract concepts and understanding cause and effect and anticipating events, that does not come on board fully until you're in your mid-20s. Now, who knows this? Car rental companies, right? You can't rent a car until you're 25. They know this. Who else knows this? Parents of teenagers. You go to the fridge, you go to get milk, the carton is empty. Who puts an empty carton back in their teenagers? No frontal lobes, right? So to understand how this works when we're little, because our brains are not fully developed, the way we process information sometimes is paralogical, and it works something like this. Bad things happen. I feel bad. I must be bad. Okay, that's the best all of us can do. All right, when we're little, it's the best connection we can make. And we do try to make these connections because we can't stand not knowing why, bad things are happening. So bad things happen. I feel bad. I must be bad. Then what happens? Now you have to stretch your imagination for this. Imagine that you're a little kid growing up in a culture that says fat is bad. No fat, low fat, non-fat, fat, 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 fat. Fat is bad. Now, what happens is bad things happen. I feel bad fat. I am bad fat because they're linked.
Mm-hmm.
So now, the way typically it works is when we're little and we go, oh, mommy and daddy got a divorce. I feel bad. It must be my fault. But when we get older, we revisit that story and we go, oh, it's 1,001 reasons why mommy and daddy got a divorce and none of them have anything to do with me. But imagine you live in a culture that says fat is bad. Now, you're not going to go back and revise that story because the lie continues to be told by the culture that fat is bad and fat people are bad and blah, 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 blah. So you can see how that then becomes even more entrenched, the lie, and it is a lie. It's not true. But because the neural pathways, you keep frequenting that thought, and it gets enforced by the culture. Even in ways the culture doesn't even want to reinforce it. Like, oh, you lost weight, you look great. What is that saying? You see, it's saying that fat is bad. So you can see, why it's difficult and how easy it is to start to personalize. And if somebody makes a comment about your weight, you think it's saying something about you rather than, wait, since when why would my body be such a concern of somebody else's? Mm-hmm. It's saying something about them, not about you. But it's hard to get to that place. But that is the truth.
And that's so true. And that's very difficult, right? Mm-hmm. Because people just sit there and they internalize it. I feel bad. I am bad. If somebody looks at me and they're angry at me, it's my fault because I'm fat and I have no willpower.
Yes.
Because I'm bad.
Yes. And that if there's one common theme, one common thought process with someone who struggles with disordered eating, it's that it's my fault. So, your husband comes home from work and he's in a bad mood. Oh, what did I do wrong? Your kid doesn't do well in school. Oh, there must be something wrong with me. You can't get along with your mother. Oh, there must be something wrong with me. You haven't been able to make friends. Oh, there must be something wrong with me. So the theme is there must be something wrong with me. And then what happens is, we're going back to what I was talking about earlier. When you feel like there's something fundamentally wrong with you, and you walk in front of the mirror and you see your flabby arms, which all of the media says that is wrong. You can't pick up a magazine without being told that you ought not to have flabby arms. And then you go, there's the problem. Yep, something's wrong with me, and it's my body.
Right.
It's tricky.
It's very tricky. So how do you help people heal from this?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I created the Light of the Moon Cafe, is because it really helps to have a community of like-minded individuals who are not doing negative body talk and fat shaming and all of that, who really get it, that it's something deeper, that something else is going on inside of you or inside of another person. And how do we get to that? Because if you can shine light on that, you can free yourself from it. So it's a bit of a paradox, and it's hard in our fat phobic obsessed culture. So the more you can surround yourself with people that really get it and go, oh, you're having a fat attack. Now, what a fat attack is when you wake up in the morning and you feel like you've gained 20 pounds overnight. Now, logically, we know it's not possible to gain 20 pounds overnight, but every fiber in your being feels like you did. A fat attack is a fear attack. What that means is an emotion or an intuition is trying to rise up into your awareness, but it's overwhelming, scary, painful, whatever. You don't know what to do with it. So the fat attack functions to distract you from that. Now imagine if you were surrounded by people that understood that, and if you said, "Oh my God, I woke up this morning feeling so fat, I don't even know if I can go to that party tonight," and someone said, "Oh yeah, sounds like you're having a fat attack. What do you think's going on?" Very different response. You see. And we don't live in that world, but there's a tribe now. There's a whole tribe, and that's what we've tried to do, is pull the tribe of women together that can support each other and understand this. And honestly, I believe, and I believe this with every fiber of my being, that those who have struggled with disordered eating and have done the work to seek recovery, they're the ones the world is waiting for. I really mean that.
Yeah.
And because they're truth bearers. They perceive subtle realities that's important that for people to know about. These invisible things like emotions and intuitions and instincts. We need more recognition of that. But those of us that are coming forth, we need support in doing that so that you don't feel like you're all alone. I was in New Zealand some time ago, and I remember being taken on a tour of the grapevines, where for the vineyards, and there were red roses and white roses planted at the ends of these rows of grapes. And I remember thinking, oh, how quaint. They have red roses for the red wine and white roses for the white wine. And then I was told, no, that's not why they have the roses. The reason they have the roses is that roses are very sensitive to aphids. And so what happened is that the farmers would be able to notice and see the aphids on the rose bushes before they attacked the grapevines, and they would be able to do what needed to be done. I believe that women who struggle with eating and body image, they're the roses. They're the most sensitive, so it shows up in them first. But if they can access the truth of what this is really about, and it's starting to happen already, and they're speaking the truth in a chorus. It's a beautiful song. It will heal our planet.
I agree with that 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So, because there are so many people and society is constantly reinforcing this message, we need to surround ourselves with people who are reinforcing a better message.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And learn how to be present with those that don't. You see,
Mhm.
it's you also need to learn how to protect yourself from the nonsense. Rose bushes have thorns. We you can't just go and live only with these people, but you can have them as a touchstone, which is why I created the Light of the Moon Cafe as an online women's circle, essentially, that's a touchstone so that people can connect in that way from all over the world.
Mm, that's beautiful. I love that. So, okay, here's my next question.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that you are working with a client individually,
Mm-hmm.
and she's sitting there and she's saying to you, Anita, I understand everything that you're saying, and what you're saying to me makes so much sense logically. But honestly, I just don't feel good at this weight. I'm not going to feel good until I lose these last 50 pounds. And my doctor says that I'm sick and I have diabetes, and my BMI is this way. And why are you telling me that I shouldn't be thinking about my weight? It's wrong. You know this. You know
Yeah,
this song.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And what I would say is, I get it. I get that you've been conditioned to believe that your weight is the problem and that you need to lose weight in order to be happier, in order to be healthier. And it's backwards. You need to be happier and healthier, and then the weight will leave if it's supposed to.
I
You
see.
see? So and does obsessing about your weight make you happier and healthier? No, it makes you sicker and sadder. So putting your attention on that will not get you where you want to go. Putting your attention on, all right, how do I live my life in a way that will make me happier and healthier? That really needs to be the focus. Now, I understand that a lot of individuals get pressure from their doctors.
Yeah.
And what I have to say is this: the doctors don't know the research. There's research that's been around, substantial research, irrefutable research from 2010 that shows that people who lose weight die sooner. And that weight is not an indicator of health. There are lots of thin or normal sized people that are very, very, very unhealthy. And there are lots of big people that are quite healthy. So to use weight as the one criteria for health is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm here to say it's dead wrong. Now, if your doctor says, okay, you've got to lose weight, say, can you give me some other markers of my health? I'd like to shoot for those. How about we do a blood workup and we'll see about, you show me what needs to be changed and I'll go about that. You see, now we're looking at health, not weight, because we're looking at weight as the marker is, it's barking up the wrong tree. It's a red herring. It's not going to give someone the happiness, the freedom, or even the bodies that they want. It will only give them an eating disorder.
Right. I agree with that.
So if you're moving your body to lose weight, you're either going to injure yourself or you're not going to be able to stay the course. If you're moving your body for the joy of it, the way you used to when you were a little kid and you splashed in puddles not to burn calories, and you swang in the swang not to get firmer thighs, but for the joy of it. That is a worthy goal.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so my next question. I'm a client of yours. Anita, I understand what you're saying. It makes sense to me, but here's the problem. When I'm thinner, people give me so much more respect. I get hired for more jobs. Men pay attention to me. when I'm this size, nobody really pays attention to me. I don't get promotions. I
Mhm.
don't really get attention. I'm just invisible.
Yeah. So I would say, so let's look at that. Because if you're saying these are all the things you want, and you did have them when you were thinner, why do you think you did what you could to not be thinner? Don't you think that's interesting?
Hmm.
You see, we assume we want these things, and we may well want them, but what if you don't have the skill set to deal with it? Okay, so you may say, "Oh, all these guys are paying attention." Excuse me, paying attention to me. But what if you don't know how to set boundaries with jerks? Or maybe you don't know how to, even in a relationship with a guy you really like, know how to let him know when he's doing something that's not okay. Then what happens is then you have to create a wall. And if you create a wall with fat, that may be how you do it. Or you may isolate yourself, or you do something because you don't have the skill set to deal with it.
To create the boundaries.
Or maybe you say, yeah, I get offered all these jobs, but maybe you have performance anxiety and you've never addressed that because with your parents, it was never good enough. A B plus was not as good. You had to get an A, and the pressure of that was dreadful. So maybe you might do something to keep from getting that top-notch job because you fear that, oh, now the expectations are going to be heavy on. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think what's really important is to develop compassionate curiosity. This is not about blaming and saying, well, you sabotaged it. Why do you? It's like, let's get curious. Let's see if perhaps this thing that you say you really want, perhaps there's reasons you don't really want that, because you don't have the skills that you need to have that fully in your life. Maybe not, but it's worth exploring in my mind.
And what if the weight that had been gained was weight that needed to be gained? For instance, and this is what I see a lot, is that people, and I'm sure you see this a lot too, people get really into their eating disorders and they start to get a lot of attention, right? People start restricting.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one client, and she's in the midst of a restricting time right now and losing way too much weight. And everybody keeps on reinforcing it and saying, wow, what are you doing? You look amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You look great. And I said to her, well, do you say to them, I'm starving? I'm not eating? I'm sick? She said, no, I don't say that.
Yeah, and you see, it really does depend. What do you say to a stranger might be different than what you would say to your spouse if they were to say that. And that's what I mean by skill set. Developing these skills also means developing some discernment about who you're going to say what to in order to protect yourself from absorbing their nonsense.
Their nonsense.
Their nonsense.
That's right. So it goes back to what you were saying earlier, the same people who are saying, oh, you're fat or you've gained some weight. It's their issue. It's their issue with fat as it is with somebody who's looking at a woman who is really skinny and saying, and probably ill, and saying, wow, you look great. Whatever you're doing, keep it up.
Yeah.
It's their issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an issue of the culture as well.
Right. Of society. Do you remember in the early 90s on MTV, there was an MTV VJ named Duff?
No.
So
I've never been a TV watcher, so I missed a lot in life.
I was a teenager, and there was an MTV VJ named Duff, and she was a model, and she was very beautiful, and it was in that time of those early 90s times of Kate Moss and Chrissy Turlington and these really thin supermodels, and she was very beautiful, and she got very ill and had to go through chemo, and I read an article that she had been interviewed for, maybe in Rolling Stone or something at that time. And she said, people kept coming up to me while I was going through chemo and said, wow, you look amazing. What are you doing? And she said, cancer. I'm doing cancer. I'm really sick right now.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I was bone thin, and this was like the early 90s,
Exactly.
and people were looking at this emaciated body and saying, that looks great. And when she wrote it out, I remember reading that article and I said, wow, there is something very wrong with our society.
Yeah.
They look at this woman who was already beautiful, who was already, this the epitome of perfect, and then she got sick and everybody said, wow, what are you doing? You look
You
great.
see, I think this is where I get very curious, because it's like, okay, what's that about? Why on earth would we live in a culture that values and has this ideal, this beauty ideal of women, be one that requires that they be sick in order to look like that? Isn't that interesting? I mean, if you can just get as curious as you can, because that's my nature. I can't help myself. It's like, I want to know, okay, so wait, how does this happen? And who came up with this idea? And why is it happening now? Whereas in the 1950s, it was a very different look. Why is it now that the smaller the woman is, the more attractive? And why is it that having buns of steel and narrow hips is considered to be attractive, and a flat belly and thighs that don't touch? Wait, why is that? Why could that possibly be considered the ideal? What is it about the psyche of the culture? Because, I'm a psychologist. I'm always looking at the psyche of individuals. But the culture has a psyche also. And frankly, I mean, what I think it is, and I don't know if this is it for sure, but what I think it is that those are the opposite sexual characteristics for a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when I look at it, I go, okay, I think the whole world is terrified of feminine sexuality and the power of feminine sexuality. I mean, we've got religions that are terrified of it. We've got governments that are terrified of it. We've got politicians that are just freaked out about it. And we are too. Men are afraid of it. Women are afraid of it. And it's like, okay, this is an awesome power. I mean, this is the power to create and sustain life itself. I mean, whoa. And so it may be that we just don't know how to handle that power. So we're so afraid of it. We just try to get rid of it or diminish it or dismiss it or degrade it or devalue it or do something to it. Just the way we as individuals in our own psyche do that with emotions that we don't know what to do with. So that's the best I can do. But I'm curious all the time. I notice it. I no longer take it personally. I recognize, though it still can have an impact on me. I don't think that there's ever, in this culture, I don't think it's possible. Maybe there's some women that can do this, that can go buy a brand new bathing suit, put it on, and their first reaction is, yes! You know what I'm saying? It's like, we can go, well, this is all right, but not yes. Because that's the nature of this conditioning that we're living in. We can come to terms with it. We can accept it. We can maybe even enjoy it, or we can notice things and say, oh, well, this looks all right. But to celebrate the physicality is hard to do in this culture. But that doesn't mean you have to walk around feeling bad about your body. It does mean, though, that you have to be conscious. You have to be aware that there's a lot of money to be made over you feeling bad about the way you look. There's oodles of money, and there's lots of people that have invested trillions and trillions of dollars in you feeling bad about the way you look, because then you'll buy their stuff.
Yeah,
It's the truth.
absolutely. 100%.
That's the nonsense that's out there that we have to deal with every day.
So how do women go about transforming their hatred of themselves and their body into, I don't even want to say body love, but I want to say body okayness, not hate?
Yeah. Well, you do it step by step, and it does require consciousness. It does require tracking your thoughts and seeing where they go. An example from my own life, I remember I was going on a trip. Actually, I was going to go speak at a conference on negative body image, interestingly enough. And I'm going through the line in the grocery store, and I'm getting my little toothpastes and shampoos and all of that. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this picture of a beautiful airbrushed belly on the body of a young woman in a bikini. Now, what popped into my head, and this is what thoughts do, because of all the conditioning in our culture, is what popped into my head immediately was, oh, I wish I had a body like that and a belly like that. Now, because I'm ready for this, I have a whole bunch of other thoughts standing by, okay? Standing in the wings. And so as soon as that happened, I knew I needed to bring in these other thoughts. So I brought in a thought that said, well, Anita, there was once a time that you had a body like that. You were really quite young. And how did you like your body back then? Well, the truth is I didn't like my body very much back then. I thought my butt was too big. I mean, I had issues, right? So, but this voice doesn't stop, because the press from the culture is very strong. And that voice says, well, I'd really appreciate it if I had that body now. So I bring in another voice that says, Anita, you carried and birthed two amazing girls who are now women. They're extraordinary beings. Would you trade them for a belly like that? Well, of course not. But it doesn't stop. So it keeps going, as well, but think of all the cool clothes I could wear if I had a body like that. And so then I bring in the big guns by now, and I'm still going through the checkout line. This is going on in my head. And the voice says, Anita, how would your 80-year-old self like the body you have now? Ooh, she would like it very much. And so it's this process. And then I get to the front of the line, and I see that this magazine, I was looking at the back of a magazine that had been flipped backwards, and the magazine was Sports Illustrated Swimwear Edition. And I thought, oh my God, Anita, you were had for 2 minutes, because I was ready for it. I know this and will continue to come my way. And so, I deal with it, and then I go on. So I was had for a couple of minutes, really, not hours and days and weeks and months.
So if Anita Johnston, 35 years treating body image and eating disorders, is still affected by the outside world's messages, then none of us are immune to it.
Not only that, what's important to understand, this is really important, because I do workshops in Hawaii, week-long workshops with Carolyn Costin and Francie White, called Tending the Feminine Psyche. And women from all over the world, professionals who treat women with negative body image and eating disorders, they come and they train with us for a week. And I'll never forget this woman. And about 50% are people that have had their own recovery experience, and they're dietitians and therapists. And one of the women said, I worked for a long time to clear my eating disorder, and I finally did. And then I started working on my negative body image. But now there's aging. That's right, folks. It never ends. So you might as well get the hang of how to deal with this.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. So I want to know more about Light of the Moon Cafe and how that came about and what it's turned into and how people can access it.
Well, it started because for years and years and years, people had asked me if there was a workbook for eating in the light of the moon. And every time I thought about doing a workbook, it just seemed too boring to me to do. And I like doing things that are fun and interesting. And so then this woman, a dietitian, had come to attending the Feminine Psyche in Hawaii. And she came to me, she goes, Anita, I want to do women's circles the way you do it. I'd like to run Eating in Light of the Moon support groups. And I said, okay, I'll teach you how to do that. And so she did that, and she was a dietitian, Elizabeth Peterson, in Virginia. And after a while, she had to keep creating more and more groups because no one ever wanted to leave. So and at that time, and I still am, but I was doing a lot of traveling around the country doing my soul hunger workshops. And, but they were I couldn't get to all these different places. So we were talking, and she said, do you think it's possible to create this kind of circle online? I said, I have no idea. And we decided to try. So it took us about a year of putting together our best material. And now 5 years later, it works. It's been incredible. So what the Light of the Moon Cafe is, and people can access it at www.lightofthemooncafe.com, is it's 8-week courses. And when you sign up, what happens is every day you'd get something different. And it shows up in your email box. So let's say day 1 is, this week we're reading chapter 7 in Eating Light of the Moon. And then day 2 will be my telling the audio of the story in that chapter set to world music. I found this amazing musician who's won several Emmys because of his world music, and he has musical instruments from around the world that he would play the backdrop as I would tell these stories. And then day 3 would be a poem about that concept. And then day 4 would be another audio of a metaphor tied to that concept. And then day 5 would be a downloadable PDF where people could take the questions and go more deeply into how that story relates to their lives and their eating struggles or weight struggles. And then the next day would be a drawing or writing exercise. And then the last day would be a playlist to listen to of inspiring songs. And then it starts all over again the next week and goes on and on for 8 weeks. And then there's a forum that everyone communicates on, and I hop on it and communicate with everybody. It's really lots of fun. And then there's 3 live calls where people can call in and with any of their questions. And so it's very interactive. It's very live. And I love it. So that feels so much better to me than it's the boring old workbook.
Yeah, absolutely. And do people have that support ongoingly, or just for the 8 weeks?
After there's 3 8-week series. So The first one is called The New Crescent Moon. It's a time of really looking at the whole eating struggle in a different way. And then if people want to continue, they can sign up for the next one, which is Under the Light of the Full Moon, where we really look at shining a full light on what that might be, what the meaning might be for your particular struggle. Mm-hmm. And then the third one is the beauty of the unseen moon, where that's where we go really deep and find those issues that might be more subterranean that have been driving the disordered eating behaviors or the food and weight obsessions, and finding out what that is. And so that goes on. And we're now we've had a bunch of people that have gone all the way through, and they're going, we want more. And so I'm going, okay, now what? So right now I'm in the process of looking like, okay, what'll be the next step? But to start off with, there are 3 8-week courses that someone can follow along. And then we have our Wise, when you've completed that, we do have a private Facebook group. We call it the Wise Women. So people for free can just continue to follow along and support each other.
They have support for a lifetime.
Yes.
That's
forever.
amazing. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I remember from the book about the moon, but I am wondering if you can tell my listeners a little bit more about what the moon symbolizes and what the light of the moon is.
Well, for me, I've discovered I'm a multicultural person, and I'm a storyteller, and I am fascinated by different cultures, that the moon traditionally in most cultures, not all, but most cultures, has been the symbol for the feminine principle. It's cyclical, it's reflective, it has a softer light. And so in my mind, a lot of the struggle around eating and weight has to do with a rejection of the feminine principle, which is, and when I say principle, I'm not talking about gender. This is where it gets a little confusing, but I'm a Jungian, and that's the language we have. And the reason they use gender-based words is because there's a lot of dream work in the Jungian tradition. And so in your dreams, the feminine principle shows up in the female form and the masculine principle shows up in the male form. But we all have the masculine and feminine principles within us, the feminine being the emotional, the intuitive, the instinctual, the relational, and the masculine being the logical, the linear, the goal achievement oriented. So you can see, regardless of our gender, we have both aspects. But what I believe as a culture is that we're cockeyed, and that the masculine, the logical, linear, goal achievement oriented, the letters after your name, the amount of money in the bank, those have been overvalued, and your emotions and your relationships and your instincts and your intuitions have been undervalued. And so as a result, our psyches are cockeyed like that. And so I like to emphasize the moon as a concrete symbol of the feminine principle so that people recognize the beauty of that.
And so part of being in the cafe under the moon is,
well, that's why the metaphor, of course, I love metaphors. So
rebalancing our feminine, right? And bringing more of that in and creating more alignment with the nurturing, the sensitivity, and the parts of us that keep us balanced.
Fed. And nurtured and nourished in a balanced way.
So we're not hungry ghosts anymore. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Lastly, just one more time, where can people find more information about you and lightofthemooncafe.com? Give me all the information that you can about where people can find more about you.
Okay. Well, I have a website, DrAnitaJohnston.com, and they can find me there. And I have the lightofthemooncafe.com. You can also find me on Facebook under Dr. Anita Johnston. I'm around. I'm accessible. And I'm happy to answer people's questions, or they could contact me at Anita@lightofthemooncafe.com.
Great. Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.